Allah is already dropping us a hint in Ayatul Bir, in ayah number 177, where Allah talks about what does it mean to be good? What does it mean to be a good person? And I'll just make one small mention of something in this ayah. Allah didn't just say, like other places in the Quran, that you have to be good to your family, right? So وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا وَبِذِي الْقُرْبَى وَالْيَتَامَى وَالْمَسَاكِينَ. Be good, be the best you can be to your parents and to close relatives and all of that. Be good to them. That's not what he says in this ayah. He says a good person is someone who gives money to their family. وَآتَ الْمَالَ عَلَى حُبِّهِ ذَوِي الْقُرْبَى وَالْيَتَامَى وَالْمَسَاكِينَ وَابْنَ السَّبِيلِ وَالسَّائِلِينَ وَفِي الرِّقَابِ. So he's not talking about your behavior towards them in terms of you're kind with them, you're gracious towards them. That's already been covered in a previous ayah. So that's already understood. But now, in a sense, if you want to be a good person, it needs to be demonstrated with your financial commitment to your family. وَآتَ الْمَالَ عَلَى حُبِّهِ ذَوِي الْقُرْبَى وَالْيَتَامَى. And then he says this, immediately following this, he says, وَأَقَامَ الصَّلَاةِ. Establish the prayer. So we went from financial to spiritual. And right after the spiritual, he says, وَآتَ الزَّكَاةِ. He goes back to financial. So he sandwiched the spiritual between the financial. As if I cannot live a life of ibadah if I don't take financial responsibility. I can't separate those two things. So what happens in the minds of some people, none of you, inshallah, is that maybe they're not really giving their sister the share in inheritance. The father died and the sister didn't get a share. Or one of the brothers said, well, I used to take care of him. You weren't there. You went to Canada or you went to America. I was the one. So you know what? I'm keeping the house. Or, he didn't really like you that much. He liked you 20%, he liked me 80%, I get 80%, you get 20%. Or whatever else. But that same guy who kept the 80%, i'tikaf every Ramadan. Fajr at the masjid every morning. 20 years, he's got his kids, he took his whole family to Umrah, this, that, the other. Still hasn't given his wife the mahar. Still haven't given her the mahar, but he's MashaAllah, like the tajweed is perfect. Leads the salah. Right? The spiritual life, Olympic level, Olympic gold level. The financial responsibilities from the same religion, not so much. Not so much. We can separate those two things and operate. And on the other side, you can get somebody who say, you know what? I'm not unfair in my business dealings. I take care of the family. I do this, that, and the other. But you know what? I don't really... So what if I don't pray? At least I'm not like these guys. They pray and then they still scam. So each side picks one. One picks financial responsibility, the other picks religious responsibility. I wanted to share this with you because Ramadan is coming up and watch what Allah does. Watch how Allah has stitched things together. Allah says that when death happens, and to anybody that death occurs, كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمْ إِذَا حَضَرَ أَحَدَكُمُ الْمَوْتِ إِن تَرَكَ خَيْرًا الْوَصِيَّةُ لِلْوَالِدَيْنِ وَالْأَقْرَبِينَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ حَقًّا عَلَى الْمُتَّقِينَ. When death comes, that if you left a will behind, this is not inheritance. Inheritance is demarcated, right? But in general, even if you left some goodwill behind, parents, close relatives, others, this is something that حَقًّا عَلَى الْمُتَّقِينَ. Allah says this is a right Allah has over the muttaqeen. If people have taqwa of Allah, they will think about what's going to happen to their money after they die. So all of us are thinking about fasting is going to give us taqwa. But before Allah talked about that, He said if you really want to be muttaqi, then you should be thinking about what's going to happen to your assets and how your family is going to be distributed. Good will be left to your family. You know what happens many times when people with some money die? Their family gets into a civil war. Their family gets into who's going to get the house, who's going to get the car, what about the account, what about the business, what about the this, what about the that. And they used to get together every Eid and everything was great and everybody loved everybody until money came. Then everybody's got their lawyers, everybody's got their weapons up, and so the father died or the mother, whoever died, but they didn't leave behind something good. They left behind chaos. And it created so much shar, and then that evil, that fight didn't just happen between two brothers or a brother and a sister. That fight then affected their children, so the cousins. And then for generations, now those families are separated. It didn't just happen between two people. Now those families have been broken for generations and generations and generations. You understand? So this is pretty serious stuff. This has implications not just in my life or your life. It can impact thousands of people going into the future. Right? So Allah says, حَقًّا عَلَى الْمُتَّقِينَ. Then He says, فَمَنْ خَافَ مِن مُوسٍ جَنَفًا أَوْ إِثْمًا فَأَصْلَحَ بَيْنَهُمْ. And if you're afraid that the person who's dying is biased, right? They're biased. So they're dying, and as they're dying, they're like, even though I have 3 sons, one of my sons, I hate him. I can't believe he's insulted me 10 years ago. So I'm leaving a will, my older son, when he comes for the share of inheritance, just say this to him. Say these words, say these hard, I never loved you, you will not get a penny or something. And the other sons will get it or something. He's got a bias, he's got some anger. And he wants to use that even after his death, exact some revenge. Now the people that are documenting the inheritance, Allah is talking not to the guy who's dying. Allah is talking to the people that are going to distribute his wealth after he's dead. He's talking to them. If you're afraid that the one leaving the will behind was biased or had some evil intention, أو إثما, فَأَصْلَحَ بَيْنَهُمْ, and therefore he rejected the will and did something right. He said, even though he's dead and this was his wish was evil, we're going to do the right thing. He's not the final authority. Doing the right thing as Allah commands, حَقًّا عَلَى الْمُتَّقِينَ, that's the right thing to do. That person who's going to go against the will, against the intent of the deceased, is going to make a lot of enemies. And he might even feel guilty because they're going to say, oh, so now that he's dead, you're going to do whatever you want? You're not going to respect his wishes? Yeah, his wishes were wrong. His wishes were wrong. And he's going to be made to feel guilty, and Allah says, فَلَا إِثْمَ عَلَيْهِ. There's no harm on that person. There's no sin for that person. إِنَّ اللَّهَ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. Allah is the one who forgives. Almost giving an ishara, not only will Allah forgive, but it may be people in this life that will never forgive that person. Right? Because they're going to make enemies. And it is after this ayah about financial equity, financial justice, after this ayah Allah says, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الصِّيَامُ. Fasting was prescribed for you. Fasting is right after this ayah. What is fasting doing here? I thought we were talking about money matters. And I'll tell you something more. There are a few ayat about fasting in Ramadan. And at the end of all of that, listen to this. وَلَا تَأْكُلُوا أَمْوَالَكُمْ بَيْنَكُمْ بِالْبَاطِلِ. This is after the ayat of fasting. Allah says, do not consume each other's money using lies. وَتُدْلُوا بِهَا إِلَى الْحُكَّامِ. And don't draw in people that can make decisions and try to influence them. Don't try to lobby judges. Don't try to influence decision makers so they rule in your favor. لِتَأْكُلُوا فَرِيقًا مِنْ أَمْوَالِ النَّاسِ بِالْإِثْمِ. So one group can consume the monies of the people using corruption, using evil. وَأَنْتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ. And you know what you're doing. That's interesting. The ayat before Ramadan are about financial justice. The ayat right after Ramadan and fasting are about financial justice. And Ramadan is sandwiched in between. And the ayat before were saying حَقًّا عَلَى الْمُتَّقِينَ. And the first thing Allah says about the fasting, the people that fast, is fasting was given to you like it was given to those before you, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, so you could have taqwa. This is not the first mention of taqwa. This is a continuation of the definition of taqwa. So it already has a part definition. And that definition doesn't have to do with worship, it has to do with money. And how you earn and how you spend money. What you use the money to do. How you influence people using your money. It's very natural that when you have a large family and some people in that family or one or two individuals in that family have a lot of money. They have a bigger house than everybody else. They have a bigger career than everybody else. The more your career, the more your money is, the more your influence is in that family. The more your say matters. The heavier your hand is. Allah says, وَلَا تَأْكُلُوا أَمْوَالَكُمْ بَيْنَكُمْ بِالْبَاطِلِ وَتُدْلُوا بِهَا يعني بالأموال إلى الحكام لِتَأْكُلُوا فَرِيقًا مِنْ أَمْوَالِ النَّاسِ بِالْإِثْمِ. Don't use your money to influence judges. Don't use your money to influence others, to make things happen your way. This is the instruction from Allah. This is the instruction. This is what taqwa actually means. Because you know, Ramadan is coming and we're going to hear a lot of reminders, and you're going to watch a lot of stuff online and even Jum'ah reminders, how to prepare for Ramadan. Start reciting the Quran. Start doing more and more worship. Start doing more and more ibadah, etc. etc. And Great. All of that's true. All of that's true. But all of that was stitched by Allah to money matters. So if Ramadan is coming and you want to become a person of taqwa, I want to become a person of taqwa, but I owe somebody money, or I haven't given somebody their financial rights, and I haven't paid the mahr to my spouse, or I didn't give my sister her share, or my business partner lost the legal case even though I know I did wrong. Right? I was able to intimidate him and not give him his share. If all of that's true, but you were able to afford i'tikaf in the haram in the last 10 nights, maybe you're cutting apart something that Allah commanded to keep joined. Maybe that is a form of hypocrisy. That is a form of أَفَتُؤْمِنُونَ بِبَعْضِ الْكِتَابِ وَتَكْفُرُونَ بِبَعْضِ. You believe in some parts of the book, you deny other parts of the book. And we cannot become those people. We cannot afford to become those people. The entire purpose of Ramadan, Allah says, شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن هدى للناس. The month of Ramadan is one in which the Quran was revealed, a guide for people. How is it that we can say that and think all Allah wants this Ramadan from me is I'm going to do how many khatam of the Quran, and the thing the Quran is telling me to do, I can recite it beautifully and pass right over it. لَمْ يَخِرُّوا عَلَيْهَا صُمًّا وَعُمْيَانًا. They don't just pass over it deaf and blind and deaf. How can that irony be? We cannot afford to do that anymore. We have to look at Allah's book the way that it should be looked at, with open eyes, with a mirror in front of me and a mirror in front of you. Just like I want to be able to say, I didn't eat anything during the fast. Right? I didn't drink anything during the fast. The same way I should be able to say, I didn't eat somebody else's money during the fast. I didn't drink somebody else's water during the fast. And this is why Allah says immediately after, وَلَا تَأْكُلُوا أَمْوَالَكُمْ بَيْنَكُمْ بِالْبَاطِلِ. It's profound that Allah does that. He makes connections in His book that we would not have made ourselves. And if we just became people that think about what Allah says, a lot of our problems would actually be resolved every Ramadan. Just like you want to come out a new spiritual person every Ramadan, you would come back a different member of the family, a different kind of business person, a different kind of responsible person with money, a different kind of person the way you make promises. Your outlook towards how you conduct yourself financially would completely change.